There is a moment, and if you're watching this right now, you have probably already experienced it. A single instant when everything inside you goes quiet. Not a peaceful quiet, but the kind of silence that arrives just before an earthquake. The kind of stillness your body creates when it finally accepts a truth your mind has been resisting for months, maybe even years. And that truth is simple, but deeply painful. This person never loved me the way I believed they did. This person has been managing me, watching me, manipulating me, and performing a version of affection that was never about my well-being, but always about their control. In that moment, you did not fall apart. You actually began to rebuild, because recognition is not collapse. Recognition is the first pulse of your own awareness coming back online after it was systematically shut down by someone who needed you confused in order to keep you close. And if that moment has found you, if you are sitting with that strange mix of clarity and grief, of relief and fear, of finally seeing and wishing you could somehow unsee, then you need to hear this. You are not crazy. You were never crazy. You were intentionally made to feel crazy because your perception was dangerous to someone who could only survive inside your blind spot. And this is exactly why you need to do something right now before we go any further. Subscribe to this channel, not because it is a casual suggestion, not because it is a routine request, but because what you are about to hear in this video and what you will continue to hear here is the kind of psychological clarity that narcissistic individuals spend enormous energy trying to keep you from accessing. Subscribing is not a small act. It is a quiet rebellion against the fog. It is you telling yourself that your understanding of reality matters, that your healing is not negotiable, and that you refuse to go back to sleep. Let this become the place where your awakening is protected and strengthened with truth. Now let me walk you through what happens on the other side of your awakening. Because while you are sitting with the weight of your realization, the narcissist is not sitting still. They are recalculating, and I want you to understand this on the deepest psychological level possible so that nothing they do next catches you off guard, because it will come, and it will come in forms you might not immediately recognize as manipulation, because they have spent the entire relationship training you to overlook their tactics, excuse their behavior, and translate their cruelty into something that sounded like love. When a narcissistic individual realizes that you have figured them out, the very first thing that shifts is not their behavior, it is their energy, and you will feel this before you can explain it. There will be a change in the atmosphere around them, a new kind of attention they give you that does not feel like care, but feels like surveillance. They will watch you more closely, not with warmth, but with calculation. They are trying to determine exactly how much you know, exactly how far your awareness has moved, and most importantly, whether you have told anyone else. Because a narcissist does not experience your awakening the way a healthy person would. A healthy person, upon realizing that their partner or loved one felt manipulated, would feel concern, curiosity, a desire to understand and repair. But a narcissist does not feel those things in that moment. What they feel is threat. Your awareness is not an invitation for growth to them. It is a breach in their defense system. It is an alarm going off inside their psychological architecture, and everything they do from this point forward is not about fixing the relationship. It is about regaining control of the narrative. And you need to burn that distinction into your mind because it will protect you from being pulled back in. The first tactic you are likely to encounter is what I call the charm offensive. And it will feel confusing because it may look like the person you originally fell in love with has suddenly returned. They will become attentive, warm, interested in your feelings. They might bring up old memories, the good ones. They might become physically affectionate in ways they have not been for a long time. They might say things that sound like accountability, things like, "I know I haven't been perfect," or "I really want to be better for you." And this is where your healing gets tested. Because this is not transformation. This is a performance calibrated to the exact emotional frequency they know you respond to. They are not changing. They are reaching into the archive of everything they learned about your emotional needs during the love bombing phase and replaying it strategically. This is hoovering in its most seductive form, and its purpose is not to restore the relationship. Its purpose is to restore your confusion, because a confused you is a controllable you, and they need you back in that fog. They need you doubting your own clarity. They need you telling yourself, "Maybe I overreacted. Maybe they really are trying. Maybe I was too harsh." And I want you to notice something important. Notice how quickly your inner voice shifts from, "I see the truth," to, "Maybe I am wrong." That shift is not organic. That shift was engineered. It was installed in you over the course of the relationship through thousands of small moments where your reality was gently, consistently, and strategically dismantled. So, when the charm returns, ask yourself one question. Is this person responding to my pain, or are they responding to my power? Because when you see clearly, you become powerful. And the charm is not a response to your pain. It is a response to the threat your clarity represents. If the charm offensive does not work, and it will not work if you stay grounded and keep accessing information like this, the next phase often involves a dramatic escalation that can take one of two forms, and sometimes both at the same time. The first is rage. And I do not mean ordinary frustration. I mean a disproportionate, disorienting, sometimes frightening eruption of anger that seems to come from nowhere, but is actually coming from a very specific place. It is coming from narcissistic injury, the psychological term for what a narcissist experiences when their false self is threatened. You have to understand that the narcissist does not operate from an authentic sense of self the way you do. They operate from a constructed identity, a carefully curated image that requires constant external validation to remain intact. And your awareness, your ability to see through them, is one of the most destabilizing things that can happen to that construct. So the rage is not really about anything you did. It is about what you now represent. You represent the collapse of their illusion, and they will fight that collapse with everything they have. The rage may show up as yelling, accusations, or twisting something you said into proof that you are the problem. It may appear as the silent treatment, which is not silence. It is punishment. It is a withdrawal of presence designed to make you desperate enough to abandon your clarity just to restore connection. And you need to understand this deeply. The silent treatment is not someone needing space. The silent treatment from a narcissistic individual is a calculated emotional deprivation designed to destabilize your nervous system, because they know, even if they cannot explain it clinically, that your attachment system will eventually try to override your rational mind if they withhold long enough. They are betting on your biology. They are betting that the pain of disconnection will become so unbearable that you will return, not because you believe them, but because your body cannot tolerate the withdrawal. And this is the trauma bond speaking. This is the neurochemical cycle of intermittent reinforcement doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you tethered through unpredictability, through alternating doses of pain and relief. Recognizing this is not weakness. Recognizing this is the beginning of your neurological freedom. The second form of escalation is perhaps even more dangerous because it is harder to detect and even harder to defend against, and that is victim posturing. This is when the narcissist flips the entire story and positions themselves as the one who has been harmed, the one who has been misunderstood, the one who has been trying so hard while you were tearing them down. And they will do this with such conviction that you may briefly forget everything you know. They will say things that reframe your boundaries as attacks, your honesty as cruelty, your self-protection as selfishness. And this is gaslighting in its most advanced form, because it does not just distort what happened, it distorts who you are. It turns you into the villain in a story where you were the one being hurt. And this is where so many survivors get trapped, not because they are weak, not because they are foolish, but because they are empathetic. And the narcissist knows this. They understand that your empathy makes you pause, it makes you question yourself, it makes you wonder if maybe you really did go too far, if maybe you should explain again, if maybe you should try one more time to make them understand. But empathy without boundaries becomes self-abandonment, and the moment you begin apologizing for your clarity, you start slipping back into the old pattern where your reality becomes negotiable. This is why your awareness must become anchored, not just emotional, but intellectual. You need to remember that manipulation often sounds reasonable in the moment. It often feels familiar, even comforting, because it speaks the language your nervous system was trained to respond to. But familiarity is not the same as safety, and intensity is not the same as love. As you move forward, you will notice something else that may surprise you. The more grounded you become, the more unpredictable their behavior may seem. That is not because they are suddenly changing, it is because their previous strategies are failing and they are testing new ones. One day they may be loving, the next distant, then apologetic, then angry again. This emotional whiplash is not confusion on their part, it is experimentation. They are searching for the version of themselves that still works on you. And every time you hold your ground, every time you refuse to argue with distortions, every time you choose silence over defensiveness, you are quietly reclaiming territory that was once occupied by their narrative. This is not easy. Your body will sometimes crave the familiar cycle because it equates intensity with connection. But healing often feels boring at first. Peace can feel unfamiliar after chaos. Stability can feel strange after adrenaline. And yet, this is where your real self begins to return. Not the version of you that was always explaining, always proving, always trying to earn softness, but the version of you that knows love does not require shrinking. The version of you that understands clarity is not cruelty, and boundaries are not abandonment. The version of you that can sit with discomfort without rushing back into the fire just to feel warm again. There will be moments when doubt returns. That is normal. Healing is not linear, and awareness does not erase attachment overnight. But each time you choose truth over comfort, you strengthen a new pathway inside yourself. You teach your nervous system that safety does not come from chaos, and that love does not demand confusion. And slowly, almost quietly, the fog begins to lift. You start noticing how much energy you used to spend managing someone else's emotions. You start noticing how calm your mind feels when you are not constantly defending your reality. You start recognizing that what you thought was love was often just relief from anxiety temporarily lifted. This is the awakening many people fear, because it asks you to let go not just of a person, but of a story you built around them. But on the other side of that loss is something deeply powerful: self-trust. And once you rebuild that, once you start believing your own perception again, the dynamic that once controlled you loses its grip. Because the greatest threat to manipulation is not anger. It is clarity held consistently over time. And that is where your real freedom begins. They have always known this. Your empathy is the very thing they noticed from the beginning. It is the door they walked through. And now they are using it against you by presenting themselves as wounded. So your natural compassion overrides your hard-earned clarity. And I want you to hear me when I say this. Your empathy is beautiful. It is one of the most valuable parts of who you are. but it must be paired with discernment, because empathy without discernment becomes self-abandonment. And you have abandoned yourself enough in this relationship. You have placed their feelings ahead of your reality more times than you can count. This is where you begin to learn that compassion for someone does not require sacrificing your own perception of truth. And if you are feeling the weight of what I am describing, if something in your chest is tightening or something behind your eyes feels heavy, I want you to take a breath right now. Not a shallow breath, a real one, the kind that fills your lungs completely and reminds your body that you are here, that you are safe in this moment, that the person I am describing does not have access to your mind right now. You are the only one here. And this space, this channel, this information, it belongs to you. And this is why I want to remind you, if you have not already, to subscribe to this channel right now, because healing from narcissistic abuse is not a single moment. It is a process. And that process requires consistent access to truth, to the kind of language that names what happened to you without minimizing it, to the kind of understanding that does not pressure you to forgive prematurely or heal on someone else's timeline. Every video on this channel is designed to act as a mirror that reflects your sanity back to you, because that is exactly what was taken. Not your intelligence, not your worth, your sense of what is real, and we are here to return it. So subscribe, stay close, and let this become the place where you are never gaslit again. Now let me take you deeper into what happens during this unraveling, because there is another layer most people rarely talk about, and it is the smear campaign. When a narcissist realizes they cannot charm you back, cannot rage you into submission, and cannot guilt you into abandoning your clarity, they begin to manage their image with other people. And this is often the most painful phase for survivors, because it attacks something even more vulnerable than the relationship itself. It attacks your reputation, your credibility, your place within your own community. The narcissist begins telling a version of the story to friends, family, co-workers, and sometimes even your own loved ones. And this version will be carefully constructed. It will contain just enough truth to sound believable, mixed with just enough distortion to make you look unstable, irrational, or cruel. They may say things like, "I tried everything, but they just shut me out," or "I'm really worried about them, they haven't been themselves lately." And notice the precision of that second statement. It is disguised as concern. It is designed to plant a seed of doubt about your mental state in the minds of people who care about you, so that if you ever try to tell your side, the ground has already been prepared for others to question you. And this is devastating, it is isolating, and it is entirely intentional. The narcissist is not venting, they are strategizing. They are building a case, not in a courtroom, but in the court of public perception. And they are doing it preemptively, because they know that the truth, if it ever fully comes out, would expose them completely. So they move first. They shape the narrative before you even realize a story is being told. And I want you to understand something about this. The people who believe the narcissist's version without ever asking for yours are revealing something important about the depth of their loyalty. And as painful as that realization is, it is information you need, because your healing will require you to build a circle of people who trust your voice, who do not require you to perform your pain in order to believe it. And you deserve that circle, even if you have to build it from the ground up. There is also a psychological phenomenon happening internally for the narcissist during this period that is essential for you to understand, because it explains why their behavior can feel so erratic and contradictory when their mask starts to slip. When they sense that the construct is failing, they experience what can only be described as psychological fragmentation. Not in the way you experienced confusion, which was induced from the outside, but in the sense that their internal system, which was never built on authentic selfhood, begins to malfunction. They may cycle rapidly between charm and cruelty, between begging and threatening, between performative vulnerability and cold detachment. And if you are watching this happen, you may feel like you are dealing with multiple different people, and in a psychological sense, you are. You are watching different masks rotate in real time as the narcissist desperately searches for the one that will still work on you, the one that will pull you back under control. And this rapid cycling is not evidence that they are in turmoil because they love you. I know that is what it can look like. I know that is what your empathetic heart wants to believe, but what you are witnessing is a system in crisis. And the crisis is not about losing you. The crisis is about losing control. There is a profound difference between someone who fears losing you and someone who fears losing control of you. And that difference changes everything. Let me speak directly now to the part of you that still feels guilty, because I know that part is there. I know that even as you hear these words and recognize the patterns, there is a voice inside saying, "But what if I am the narcissist? What if I am the one being unfair? What if I am exaggerating? What if I caused this?" And I want to speak directly to that voice, with the full weight of clinical understanding. The fact that you are asking that question is itself the answer. Narcissistic individuals do not sit with genuine concern about whether they are being fair. They do not lose sleep wondering if they have hurt someone. They do not consume content like this, trying to understand their own potential for harm. The very fact that you are here, listening, reflecting, examining your own behavior with this level of honesty and fear tells me that you are not what you are afraid of being. You are the opposite. You are someone whose conscience was weaponized against you. Someone whose willingness to self-reflect was used as a tool to keep you trapped in constant self-doubt. And that is one of the most painful aspects of this entire dynamic. The narcissist takes your best qualities, your empathy, your accountability, your desire to be fair, and turns them into chains. They make your goodness the very thing that keeps you stuck. And breaking free does not require you to become cold or hardened or suspicious of everyone. Breaking free requires you to redirect those beautiful qualities back toward yourself, to treat yourself with the same compassion you offered them, to give yourself the same benefit of the doubt you gave them again and again, to stop assuming that your instincts are wrong simply because someone else was louder. I also want to address something that happens after you begin to pull away, because the narcissist has one more strategy that is perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated of all, and that is the manufactured crisis. When charm does not work, when rage fails, and when guilt stops pulling you back, the narcissist may create a situation that forces you back into proximity or into a caretaking role. This might look like a sudden health scare, a financial emergency, or a mental health crisis that seems to appear out of nowhere with almost perfect timing. And I want to be careful here, because I am not saying people do not experience genuine crises. They absolutely do. But the hallmark of a narcissistic manufactured crisis is its timing and its function. It appears when you are closest to freedom. It requires your specific involvement, and it results in you abandoning your boundaries to attend to them. And once you are back in their orbit, the crisis often resolves itself with remarkable speed, because it was never really about the crisis, it was about the retrieval. It was about pulling you back into the emotional gravitational field where they feel most powerful. And I know how hard it is to watch someone you cared about appear to struggle and not respond. I know the guilt can feel overwhelming, but I need you to ask yourself this. How many of your genuine struggles did they truly show up for? How many of your real crises were met with support instead of deflection, minimization, or a pivot back to their needs? Your honest answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know about whether this crisis is a call for help or a call for control. As you move through this process, As you begin to see each tactic for what it is and feel your feet getting steadier on the ground, you are going to experience something unexpected. You are going to grieve, and not just the relationship. You are going to grieve the version of yourself that existed before this happened. You are going to grieve your innocence, your trust, your belief that love should not require this much vigilance. And that grief is sacred. Do not rush past it. Do not let anyone tell you to simply move on. Grief is not a sign that you made the wrong decision. It is evidence that you loved deeply and hoped sincerely. It is the emotional processing of letting go of an illusion that once felt safer than the truth. And healing asks you to stay present with that sadness without turning it into self-blame. There will be days when you miss them, and that does not mean you should go back. There will be moments when you question yourself, and that does not mean you were wrong. Grief often travels alongside clarity. You can know something was unhealthy and still mourn what you wished it could have been. Those two realities can exist at the same time without canceling each other out. As the dust settles, you may begin to notice something subtle but powerful. Your nervous system starts to relax in ways you did not realize were possible. You begin to think more clearly. You stop rehearsing conversations in your mind. You stop scanning for emotional danger, and slowly, without fanfare, your sense of self begins returning. Not the version of you shaped by survival, but the version of you rooted in truth. And that is when you understand that healing is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to who you were before you learned to doubt your own reality. It is about rebuilding trust with yourself, decision by decision, boundary by boundary. It is about recognizing that your empathy was never the problem. The problem was giving it to someone who treated it as a tool rather than a gift. So as you sit with everything you are feeling right now, let yourself grieve, let yourself breathe, and let yourself notice that you are still here. You are still capable of clarity, still capable of love, still capable of choosing yourself. And the more you practice that choice, the more the fog lifts, until one day you realize you are no longer trying to convince yourself of the truth. You are simply living inside it. Do not perform recovery for anyone else's comfort. Your healing is not meant to make other people feel at ease. Your grief is proof that you loved honestly in a situation that was fundamentally dishonest, and there is no shame in that. The shame belongs to the person who exploited that love, not to the one who offered it with sincerity. And as you allow yourself to grieve, something else will begin to unfold. Slowly at first, almost quietly, but with growing steadiness, you will begin to trust yourself again. Not the frantic, anxious kind of trust that keeps asking, "Am I right?" over and over, but a deep and grounded trust. The kind that does not rely on external validation because it is rooted in your own lived experience. You will begin to notice when something feels off, and instead of dismissing that feeling, you will honor it. You will begin to speak and hear the strength in your own voice. You will start making decisions based on what is true rather than what someone else needs you to believe. And this is not arrogance. This is restoration. This is you returning to the version of yourself that existed before someone needed you diminished in order to feel powerful. I want to leave you with something I hope you carry long after this video ends. You were never the problem. You were the target. And there is a vast difference between those two things. Being targeted does not mean you are flawed. It means you had something valuable. Your warmth, your loyalty, your capacity for deep love, your willingness to see good in people, those are not weaknesses. They are gifts. And the person who exploited them was not powerful. They were desperate. Because real power does not need manipulation. Real power does not rely on deception. Real power does not diminish another person. just to feel whole. Everything they did to you was a confession of their own emptiness, disguised as your inadequacy. And now that you can see that, you are no longer trapped inside their story. You are standing in your own. And your story from this moment forward is one of clarity, strength, emotional sovereignty, and someone who walked through psychological fire and came out not destroyed, but deeply aware. That awareness is your superpower. It is the one thing no one can take away from you now. Because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Once you feel the truth in your own body, no one can argue you out of it. And that is what terrifies a narcissist more than anything. Not your anger, not your pain, but your clarity, because your clarity makes you unreachable, and an unreachable version of you is a free version of you. Freedom is not loud or dramatic. Sometimes it looks like quiet certainty. Sometimes it looks like the simple decision to no longer negotiate your own reality. So here is what I want you to do right now as a final act of commitment to yourself and to the healing path you are walking. Subscribe to this channel not as a passive viewer, but as someone who has made a decision that says, I choose to stay awake, I choose to keep learning. I choose to surround myself with language that validates my experience and strengthens my resolve. I choose to never again be in a relationship where I have to prove that my pain is real. Subscribing is a small action with profound meaning. It means you are building a personal library of truth that you can return to whenever the fog tries to roll back in, whenever self-doubt shows up, whenever you hear their voice in your head telling you that you are too sensitive, too much, or somehow not enough. You come back here and remember who you actually are. You are the one who figured it out. You are the one who saw through it. And that makes you not just a victim of what happened, but a survivor stepping into the full power of someone who will never be fooled in the same way again. And that is more than healing. That is freedom. It is the quiet strength of someone who understands their own worth without needing permission. It is the steady breath of someone who no longer abandons themselves to keep someone else comfortable. It is the beginning of a life where your empathy remains intact, but your boundaries stand beside it. Where your kindness is offered by choice, not demanded by manipulation. Where your voice belongs to you again. And as you move forward from here, carry this with you. You were never broken for loving deeply. You were never weak for hoping things could change. You were human. And now you are aware. And awareness, once awakened, becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. It is the reason you will recognize red flags faster. It is the reason you will pause when something feels wrong instead of explaining it away. It is the reason your future relationships can be built on truth instead of confusion. So take a breath and feel that for a moment. You are not behind. You are not ruined. You are rebuilding with knowledge you did not have before. And every step you take from here is guided by clarity that was earned. That clarity is not fragile anymore. It lives in you now. And it will keep guiding you toward people, spaces, and experiences that do not require you to shrink in order to belong. You are not returning to who you were before. You are becoming someone stronger, steadier, and more awake than ever before. And that journey, the one where you choose yourself without apology, is the truest form of freedom there is.